Good morning, brothers and sisters, again. And we are truly enjoying the camp meeting experience. The Lord gives us in every camp meeting, in every Sabbath, a new experience. And I sometimes hear people say, and I myself think, what if the Lord would come on a Sabbath or during a camp meeting? Why do we hear people say those words? Well, those are the days, those are the times that we feel that we are the closest, that our children are with us, and that we are doing that which the Lord is content and happy that we are with Him and communion with Him. But that is just temporary. That is just transient in many experiences. The Sabbath seems to be a high, and then what happens during the week, or even right at the close of the Sabbath, there comes a dip and a low, and many times very, very, very low. And to many, the experience of the Sabbath did not teach them to trust in the Lord and to love Him and to keep His commandments during the whole week. What does the Bible Sabbath say? Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. I want to touch upon the link that there is between the family and the Sabbath. These were the two institutions, the twin institutions that were instituted in Eden, and they came from the Garden of Eden with our first parents. Notice the family and the Sabbath. The two greatest tragedies of society today. The family is in disarray, to say the least. Many are in tragic situations. The Sabbath is transgressed in every land and in every type and condition. And it seems like even among Christians and Seventh-day Adventist believers, both institutions are as well suffering. When I read in the Spirit of Prophecy that it says, not all those who profess to keep the Sabbath holy will be sealed. It is a very solemn thought. It does not mean that just because we are together or gather the family and go to the church on the Sabbath day, on the true day of worship, that we have a passport that will lead us to heaven. There must be what? Sanctification. A change of heart. A transformation. Not only must we be together and bring the family together, but we must observe the Sabbath commandment in the spirit that will truly have the benefit of our character, upon our characters. We are told that we must keep the Sabbath, what? Holy. But only holy persons can keep the Sabbath holy. And the Sabbath commandment is a sign of God's sanctifying power upon His people. So there is a link and a correlation. Sadly, in my travels and my experiences, I meet with many persons, some who have kept the Sabbath in their younger days, in the younger years, and anything to do with that church, they call it. Their experiences were not pleasant. They were not memorable. They want to forget. They rather forget those times when there was this Pharisaical experience of do's and don'ts. Why is that? What is the reason that there is such a bad experience in many adults of the days when they were children? There was no change of heart. There was no experience with Christ. And then in another similar manner, you find persons that have really bad experiences or memories about previous marriage or relationship. And the only thing that they can think of is how bad it was. Why is the enemy so determined to break down these two institutions? It is because it affects every person, not just the older, younger, married, unmarried. It affects everyone, and in general, whole societies. But the commandments of the Lord are what? Our wall of protection. He wants to keep us safe from all the attacks of the enemies. And I believe we must begin at these institutions, restoring the Sabbath and the family in our life. So we're going to just, even though yesterday was the Sabbath, the holy day, we're just going to review today a little bit of what it means to observe the Sabbath, and hopefully remind us and promoting us to share and to live the true Sabbath in our homes. To those who keep holy the Sabbath day, it is a sign of sanctification. True sanctification is harmony with God, oneness with Him in character. It isn't what? Timekeeping and rushing and cleaning up quickly so that we can profess to be resting in the Lord. In the time of the end, every divine institution is to be restored. And I believe that we must begin at home, and we must begin with those 10 commandments that we, as people of God, represent, profess as keeping before the world, and that we must ourselves be examples. What is the connection between the commandments and the family? Let us turn to Deuteronomy Chapter 6 as we read. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. What is the common element in these verses? We must spend time with our children. This is what I gather from these verses. And what is the Sabbath? It is time. It is a period of time the Lord has given to us. We can restore the family as we are as well restoring the Sabbath commandment. Let's turn to the book of Deuteronomy, just the previous chapter, where the 10 Commandments were reiterated. Verse 12, it says, "Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. 6 days thou shalt labor, and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work." Who? "Thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thine ass, nor any of thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest, as well as thou." The Sabbath and the family are to be together. In the keeping of the Sabbath, it is essential that we consider every member is also part. Every member of that family is also part of the Sabbath commandment. And I may keep the Sabbath, and my children may be what? Desecrating the Sabbath at the same time. We must make sure that that isn't the case. That does not happen. Just looking into our church practices. And just even recently, I was reminded of that by Marianne kindly when I was giving a Bible study. It was Sabbath afternoon, and we began at 2:30. It was 5 o'clock, and we had not concluded. 5:30, and came nearly 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I justified it by saying, well, the brethren are they're asking questions, and we need to follow up and continue now that we have the opportunity to study. It's the Sabbath, so what else do we need to be doing? But the group was just adults. Why? Too long, and the topic was dealing with that which we, like doctrine and so forth. Our children were outside. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that picture? There are 2 parts to the Sabbath, right? 2 parts. We need to be at the Sabbath school. We should be at the church with the Sabbath school and divine service. But what should be the next part of that Sabbath? Okay, everyone should be there. That is to be dedicated. Yes, Nina? Okay, so we should be in nature, walking through the groves and so forth, and teaching them lessons from there. We can also sit in a natural setting and what? Review next week's lesson with the children. Ask them the questions of what they had learned in the morning. and dedicate what? Time to them. The family can only be restored if the Lord has described to us. Do you remember Achan? Achan committed a terrible sin. He stole what did not belong to him. But at the time of the punishment, who were punished? Achan and his family. Now, what the Lord does not place guilt from the fathers to the children, right? He's not going to arbitrarily punish all for the sin of one. But what was the reason that the punishment had to fall upon the family of Achan?
Because they knew what he had done.
They knew?
They knew what he had done, and they did nothing about it.
They knew. They hid it as well. It was inside their home. It was a common part of their character as a family. And together they transgressed the Lord's commandments. Well, this again is a counsel, an exhortation to us to be careful of how we observe the commandments of the Lord in our homes, because what? We will all be learning from each other to do equally the same. And in the observance of the Sabbath, we may be what? Well-dressed, taken care for, and taken care of everything, and behaved in the church. But the rest of the Sabbath hours were at home. And the children are learning of how that is truly kept or wrongly kept by those practices at home. We need to be so careful. This is what it says in Testimonies, Volume 6. On Friday, let the preparation for the Sabbath be completed. See that all the clothing is in readiness and that all the cooking is done. Let the boots be blacked and the baths be taken. It is possible to do this. If you make it a rule, you can do it. The Sabbath is not to be given to the repairing of garments, to the cooking of food, to pleasure seeking, or to any other worldly employment. Before the setting of the sun, let all secular papers be put out of sight. We should jealously guard the edges of the Sabbath. Remember that every moment is consecrated, holy time. Whenever it is possible, employers should give their workers the hours from Friday noon until the beginning of the Sabbath. Give them time for preparation, that they may welcome the Lord's day with quietness of mind. Testimonies, Volume 6, 355 and 56. As well, we need to take care of pay attention to another part of the preparation. There is another work that should receive attention on the preparation day. On this day, all differences between brethren, whether in the family or in the church, should be put away. Before the Sabbath begins, the mind as well as the body should be withdrawn from worldly business, and so forth. Our children, will learn to observe the Sabbath from the parents. do that as well in their experience. And if the Sabbath is just a time where stern rules are set, but the rest of the week is looseness, what will happen? The children will learn to despise or hate the Sabbath and will actually want nothing to do with it when they leave the home. But that does not mean that we should be uncareful in the preparation of the Sabbath, that we should not observe the Sabbath correctly. Because if everything is done in the right spirit, we can then have time for communion with the Lord and with our children. Then it will be a delight to be on the Sabbath day. There is no other distraction. Those other things were put away, and our families would benefit from that time. Brethren, there is a very important, very critical time coming for God's people. And that is that we will be tested on the Sabbath observance. But if we have not had the true spirit of sanctification of the Sunday law or other things by fear, we can pretend or profess to fit in to the things that will avoid persecution and other distress. But our hearts will not be sanctified. And we will not receive the seal of the living God. Pure hearts will be sealed. And we must learn at the foot of the cross what it means to be purified by the Word and the work of the Holy Spirit in us. I pray that we pay attention not just to the letter and the rules, but to the heart and to the spirit of the commandments. It's my wish and prayer. Amen.